What's up, everyone? Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well. Today is Wednesday, April the 29th. We do have FOMC here today. That is going to be at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We also do have a bunch of earnings as well tonight with a bunch of the Mag 7, which we'll talk about here. Not expecting too much pre-FOMC. As I mentioned, all the major news events are happening a little bit later. We had some more earnings. We have Robinhood. That's down a little bit. SoFi here in the morning as well. So we'll talk about all that here in a second. Before we do that, let me pull up the economic calendar. What's up, everyone? Good morning. Good morning, Sam. Good morning. And what's up, Victor, Gusta, Gerald, Cosmic, Lamit. Good morning, Chris, Brian. What's up, Deuce, Detecto, Francisco, TSD. Good morning, Knight, BT, Robert, Lucky, Julius, Geo. What's up, Harold, Nama? What's up, everyone? Yeah, good morning. Hope you guys are doing well. Let's get right into exactly what we're looking for coming into today, starting off with the economic calendar. So as you can see right here, we do have FOMC that is going to be fairly big here. That is going to be at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, followed up by the Fed speaking that is going to be at 2:30. So the game plan for today is to be a lot more hands off in the markets. Most likely just going to be waiting for that FOMC statement later into market open. Unless we have some sort of relative strength, the only name I do see with the higher time frame thesis, Intel and a couple of the semis and memory names, right? We did have some earnings with STX, one memory name that's really pushing up the SMH and a bunch of these other memory names as well, which we'll talk about. But for the rest of the tickers, right, we'll talk about that a little bit here in a second. But for some more red folder news, 8:30, that's going to be tomorrow, advanced GDP, along with the core PCE price index, unemployment cost, and of course, we have the unemployment claims here as well. That is also going to be at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Followed up by Friday, we have the ISM manufacturing. So the main thing is today, which is going to be that FOMC statement at 2 p.m. As for the earnings calendar, we had a couple big ones yesterday. Robinhood, that one was down about 10%, right? We had BE. STX was a big one. This one's up about 20% in the after hours last time I checked. So this one's really helping out a lot of memory names here. MU moving nicely in the pre-market. We have Intel. We have SNDK. SNDK is going to report in a couple of days. So we had a lot of big ones. We'll talk about that here. And then, of course, we had SoFi in the morning. That one dropped with Robinhood. And then tonight, we have Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, Google, a bunch of the big tech reporting. Tonight, it's going to be after close. And then, of course, we do have Apple tomorrow, followed up by a bunch of other memory names like SNDK and Western Digital. So a lot of big ones coming up here fairly soon. So we'll just be waiting for now after earnings on most of these ones to see, right, some more clear guidance and what the market wants to do. But now let's start off with the higher time frames here on the Qs and SPY. So yesterday was the first day we actually closed underneath its previous candle low here as well, which we'll talk about based off momentum wise. So as you can see here, if we're on the ES or the NQ, either ticker, this is the first day that we close underneath its previous candle low. So you can see every single day, ever since we gapped down, candle closed above its previous day lows. You can keep marking these candles out. Every single down close candle end up getting bought up and closed above its previous day lows until yesterday. Right, yesterday was the first sign of momentum slowing down here in the markets, is when that previous candle low, as you can see here, got closed underneath. So this is the first sign of momentum slowing down here on the higher time frames on both the SPY and the QQQ. This doesn't mean that price cannot gravitate higher. This just means the momentum is shifting. You can see a couple names, especially yesterday, right? The price action yesterday was the first day where the tape was staying a little bit heavy. We didn't really see too many buyers step in yesterday, right? We had some buyers step in right off the bat, but ultimately that got shorted into, and there was no real bounce here in the market. So Let's go into the QQQ. So as you can see here, coming into market open, at least for this week in specific, you can see we have Monday's price action and we have Tuesday's price action for the Qs. If we do want to see upside, it's going to have to be above our previous day highs, and we're going to have to reclaim back above our previous low that we created here on Monday as well. So this is the area that we can have drawn out, which is that 660. So if we do want to see some upside, as I mentioned, I'm not really interested in trading today, right? At least within the morning session, we could see a nice potential move back towards the highs. We have this gap fill as well back towards the upside. But in my opinion, whenever you trade pre-FOMC, you're going to have to be on the 5-minute time frame at a minimum. And of course, you're going to have to be sized in much lower just because there's less volatility, especially the volatility is priced in for the earnings tonight. So a lot of times you'll see the implied volatility is a little bit elevated just because we do have FOMC later into the day. And whenever the IV is going to be elevated, we're just going to be waiting for that news event. Any big move that does happen in the markets is going to be later into the session. And then, of course, we do have earnings in the after hours as well, which is going to affect the markets the most. So for the key levels that we have for the markets today, what we're going to be looking for is the reclaim back above 660 for a potential move back up and towards that 664 here on the QQQ. If we can reclaim back above that level, potential continuation up and towards that 664. If we reject off this level, we can see a move back down in towards that 657 here, back down in towards really that previous day close that we do have. As I mentioned, not that interested in trading coming into market open just because we do have FOMC later into the day. As for the SPY chart, key levels that I have marked out is going to be that previous day highs along with our Monday's lows. If we do want to see upside, similar thing, back above our 712, hold above that 712, potential continuation up and towards that 715. If we reject off this level, maybe reclaim later into the session, we can see this continuation higher back up and towards that 715. If we reject off our previous day highs, we can see a push right back down in towards our previous day lows, which happens to be our 710 here on the higher time frame. So this is what I have here on the SPY coming into market open along with the Qs as well. We'll go into a couple names that I am looking for here on the SPY and Qs and what I like on the higher time frames. Primarily, it's just going to be some of the semiconductors. As you can see, the SMH up about 1% here in the pre-market. Nice buyers that kind of stepped in right off our higher time frame key levels. For the SMH, what we had here on the hourly time frame is essentially this higher low on the hourly chart, 488. As you can see, higher lows are being built. What I like to see is this essentially retest in this level of support resistance turn into support for this continuation higher. If we're looking for that next leg towards the upside on the SMH, needs to get back above our previous day highs hold for a potential move back towards the upside. If we're looking for continuation, as I mentioned, above our previous day highs on SMH, we can see a move back up in towards that 500 along with the close that we have, which is our 506. If we ultimately reject off this area, we're going to see a push right back down in towards its previous day close, which is that 492. So as you can see here, really, I'm leaning a little bit more towards the upside on the SMH, of course, since this one is the most bullish out of all the major indices, right? This is your first dip that you do have. I like to see if that first dip can get bought up and we continue back towards the upside. Of course, you have a couple names that are fairly bullish here, with especially these memory tickers. All right, with that being said, let's go into a couple tech names that we do have coming to market open, starting off with Tesla. Really not too much to talk about Tesla here. If we're looking at this on the daily chart, as we kind of talked about, the key level for the daily time frame is going to be this 380. So if we can get above 380 on Tesla, we can see this nice continuation back towards the upside. If we're underneath that 380, not really too much is happening. And we can see a push back down in towards our this week's low, which is that 360. So main levels, a lot more consolidation after, of course, earnings last week. What we're going to have marked out here is that 385. Other levels is going to be that 372. If you do want to see upside above our 385 hold for continuation towards the upside or the potential bounce play off our 370. If we reject off our 385, continuation lower or now underneath 370, we can see a potential continue push down in towards that 360 here on the higher time frames. As for a few other tickers here, Nvidia pulled back yesterday, basically gapped down, similar thing with AMD, but these ones are bouncing. And of course, the higher time frames are still very much intact. So for Nvidia, as you can see here, this is basically our previous all-time highs. What we like to see, at least on the weekly time frame, is the hold above our previous all-time highs for continuation towards the upside. As you can see, we do have multiple touches. This is a key level here as well. So for Nvidia, this is essentially the area that we broke out from, which is our 208. You can see nice hold of that previous day lows yesterday. Buyer stepped in off this level as well. Other level that we do have marked out is going to be that 212. So if we do want to see continuation higher here on Nvidia, maintain above our 212 for that push up in towards our previous day highs. Another possible scenario above our previous day highs, continuation up and towards our all-time highs here, which is that 217. So still very much bullish here on Nvidia, holding above key levels. Let's see if we can get that continued push up and towards that 217, which is the all-time highs that we do have on this ticker. So let's keep an eye out on that 217 along with that 212 here on AMD. Sorry, that's on Nvidia. As for AMD, another one that actually filled its full daily gap. This one is very bullish. As you can see, a little bit of a pullback yesterday, maintained above that daily gap, and now we're trying to fill the gap back towards the upside. So for AMD, nice buyer stepped in here off our 310. Now the key levels that we have marked out is that 310, of course. We have our previous day highs marked out here now, along with our 335. Nice buyer stepping in here in the pre-market. Now we just like to see it maintain above our previous day highs for that push up in towards that 335. So keep this in mind for AMD coming into market open. It's just going to be the hold of our previous day highs for continuation. Another possible scenario, is going to be above our 335 for this push towards the upside here as well. So two scenarios on AMD. Not interested in shorts on the semis as I talked about. Semis is definitely the last thing we should be looking for shorts, just because, right, SMH fairly bullish, Nvidia, AMD at all-time highs, a lot of memories leading the markets higher, right? You had a couple opportunities, but really not too much. This was the gap down yesterday, right? The day previous within the first 5 minutes, really not too many opportunities where you could be looking for, right? Higher time frame, as I mentioned, still very much bullish. You'd much rather look for, right, any sort of major major dips to go long here in the markets. So for Nvidia and AMD today, Nvidia 212, AMD is going to be that 327. As for Apple, this one, of course, does have earnings coming up. That is going to be on Thursday. So we'll just wait for after earnings on this ticker. A lot of tickers do have earnings today, right? Google, we'll wait for after earnings. Of course, this one's very much bullish. We're not going to trade this one today unless you're well positioned, right? You can hold through earnings or maybe you're long term, right? Similar thing, right? Google does have earnings tonight. Microsoft, earnings tonight here. Nice kind of bull flag forming on the higher time frames. Let's see if we can get that potential push back up and towards that 440. But we'll wait for after earnings on this one. Similar thing here with Meta. Nice push towards the upside. Potential bull flag forming here on the daily chart. Let's see what happens with earnings tonight as well. So bunch of earnings. Google, Microsoft, Meta. And we also do have Amazon here that does have earnings as well. So Amazon looks good, basing above, of course, our previous all-time highs. Let's see if we can get that continuation towards the upside here on this ticker. As for the key levels on a lot of these ones, it's just going to be our previous day lows, along with our key levels from last week, right? Similar thing with Meta and a lot of these tickers. But as I mentioned, we'll talk about all of these ones tomorrow once earnings is finished. As for Netflix, this one right at a key level support here, which is our 92 key psych. As you can see, we have multiple touches here right off our key level support. Let's see if any sort of potential buyers can step in and we can reverse back up in towards our 96 here on Netflix. As you can see, a little bit of buyer stepped into close, right? Downtrend is still intact. We're going to have to break above this downtrend if we want to see any sort of reversal back towards the upside. If we just reject off this level, then we can see this pop and fade. If it gets back underneath, we can see this reversal back towards the downside. But yeah, that's it for today. As I mentioned, not really too much to talk about. Of course, we do have FOMC later along with a bunch of earnings. The only tickers that you can be looking for are NVIDIA, AMD, along with Tesla. The rest of the names are just going to be patient and wait for after earnings. We have a couple other names that we have a couple other names that we're going to talk about here in a second. But yeah, if you guys do have any charts or any tickers you'd like me to go over here now, we have some time today, so we'll go over a few other ones. If you guys are enjoying this so far, I appreciate if you guys drop a like. If you guys haven't joined the free daily watch list, that of course is in the description below here as well. Why is IV on Intel so high? Yesterday it was trading around 99, just because Intel, as you can see, we've had such a big move within the past couple of weeks, right? Up about 100% here. And of course, right, any name that does have this big of a move, the IV is going to be a little bit elevated, right? Earnings a couple of days ago here as well. That's normal, right? Normally speaking, the IV is going to be a little bit higher. It's all relative. So if you're looking at a name that's regular, let's say Tesla, it's going to be around 70%. But names like Intel, based off of the previous IV, it's just going to be elevated, right? It's all relative. If the normal IV is around 90, then that's fine for most of these tickers, right? All these other tickers that are leading the markets, right? You have like Hood, SoFi, right? The IV is always going to be elevated on these ones, but that's relatively speaking. All right, let's go on to Intel. Higher time frames, kind of forming this flat top here. As you can see here on the hourly time frame, nice buyers that stepped in. Of course, we had this nice pop with earnings last week. Now we're building these higher lows as well. So for Intel, what I like to see coming to market open is one of two things, right? Break above this flat top for continuation towards the upside, or we can see this potential retest of our previous day highs for this push higher here as well. Let's go on to the 15-minute time frame. Key levels that we do have marked out, as I mentioned, is going to be that previous high that we have created. So let's just kind of mark this out, drag this down. As I mentioned, two scenarios coming into market open above our 87, continuation towards the upside. Another possible scenario here as well is going to be the hold above our 85 for continuation higher. So two scenarios on Intel. Let's keep an eye out on this one. Higher time frame is still very much intact. So what we're going to keep an eye out for previous day highs along with our all-time highs, 87 here on Intel for continuation. What are the main names to keep an eye out for? If you go on to STX, this is the one that had earnings yesterday, kind of moving all these memory names towards the upside. But as you can see, this one at all-time highs, continuation. Key levels that we have marked out is just going to be these pre-market levels, right? You can mark out that pre-market high. If you do want to see continuation, majority of the times, right, day one earnings is not a day that you want to be trading. There hasn't been too many day one earnings plays as of late, so you just want to be a little bit more patient. But as you can see, this is the one that's up about 15% here in the pre-market. And that's basically helping all the other memory tickers, as you can see, right? MU, SNDK, WDC, all these ones are pushing back towards the upside. SNDK does have earnings coming up fairly soon, but as you can see here for MU at least, nice buyer stepped in. If you're looking at this one on the hourly time frame, nice higher lows were built. Right, defended our key levels very nicely, which happens to be that 490, and now we are back at our all-time highs. For MU, the key levels that we're going to have marked out is going to be that all-time highs key level, along with our 517 here as well. So if you do want to see some upside above our previous all-time highs, or now you're going to be waiting for the bounce here off our previous day highs, 517, for that continuation higher here as well. As for SNDK, another one that is at, of course, our all-time highs. The key levels that we do have marked out is going to be that 1,060. If you do want to see continuation higher, it needs to be above our previous day highs. Hold above that level for a continuation up and towards our really next levels on the higher time frames, 1,100, which is, of course, our all-time highs. SNDK, I'll be a little bit more hands-off just because this one does have earnings on Thursday. But this one's still very much bullish. If you're looking at all these tickers, higher time frames, very much intact on a lot of these semiconductors along with memory. Intel looks really good here as well. WDC, similar thing. This one's already back at all-time highs. A little bit of a pullback, But as you can see with earnings in the after hours with STX, this one nice pop, and now we're at all-time highs on this ticker. So a lot of the memories and semis still leading the markets towards the upside. If we go into a few other tickers, right, Palantir not really doing too much, just right at our 138. So you just want to be a little bit more patient on this one. If you look at the daily chart, really not too much has happened here as well. So just a lot more consolidation here on the daily chart. We have earnings next week. So most likely it's not really going to do too much beforehand, but at least for the key levels on Palantir, it's going to be this 140 here on the higher time frames. Other levels that we do have is going to be this 150. AVGO, a little bit of a pullback yesterday. If we look at this one on the daily chart, right, weekly time frame, a little bit of reaction here. As you can see, price is gravitating towards the downside. We'll see how this weekly candle closes, but the only level of support that we do have on AVGO is going to be our last week's key levels, which, as you can see, what we have marked out is going to be that 396. If we break underneath our 396 on the hourly time frame, this is going to be the momentum shift and the break of structure towards the downside. If we can maintain above this, this is essentially our higher low here on the hourly. We can see a potential mean reversion back towards the upside. So for AVGO, buyers are stepping in here off that last week's lows, but now we need to see the break back above our previous day highs for any sort of continuation. Oracle, a little bit of a drop here, rejection. We do have this gap that we can look to fill back towards the downside. If we go on to a few other tickers, Hood. So Robinhood, nice pop off from the lows, and now you can see price. We recently had earnings yesterday, and now you can see we're dropping about 11% here. So 11% here on Robinhood, down in towards key levels. So we have a couple of gaps that we're currently filling towards the downside. We have another gap up here as well. So for Robinhood, on the higher time frames, we're about to open up right around these lows, which isn't the greatest sign. But as you can see here, breaking underneath key levels, we had a level of support yesterday, which was at 82. Of course, we had earnings as well. Now for Robinhood, really the next key level support is going to be all the way down in towards our 68 here on the higher time frames, plus the level that we gapped up from, which is going to be our 71. So a couple key levels on Hood, right? Higher time frames, we can expect it to gravitate lower, 71 and 68 on the higher time frames. And we do have some more room lower here as well. Similar thing with SoFi, very similar chart. Of course, they're in the similar sectors here as well. But as you can see here, another couple gaps that we're filling towards the downside for SoFi. Key levels, if we are marking out on the higher time frames, is the exact levels. We have our 1650. A little bit of buyers are stepping in, but not too much. Similar setup with, of course, Hood. This one, bearish reaction, and now we are continuing lower. So Hood, SoFi dropping here with earnings. As for the rest of the tickers, right, memories leading the markets back towards the upside. So we'll keep an eye out on that. As for a few other tickers, what setups do you have in the afternoon? So with the earnings and FOMC later into the day, a lot of times whenever we do have that first initial FOMC, right, majority of times it's just going to be, right, sweeping liquidity on both sides, unless we have a surprise rate cut, or, right, if the markets aren't pricing in something, we'll have a big move either way. But majority of the times, right, we'll have that first initial reaction. If it comes in line with expectations, nothing's going to happen. And then the only thing that can move the markets is going to be FOMC at 2:30. So as you can see, forecasted is going to be 3.75. So if it comes in with line with expectations, not expecting too big of a move, and then essentially we'll be waiting for guidance at 2:30. But let's say we do have any sort of rate cuts, or, right, let's say the markets do price in rate cuts, right? We're going to have a very big reaction on the markets, and then we're going to have a lot of volatility. But if it does come in line with expectations, not expecting too much, and then most likely it'll move later with the Fed speaking, and then potentially later into the day with the earnings that we do have in the after hours. So the actual setups in itself, we're going to have to keep an eye on the reaction that we have off key levels, right? It's more just based off of the reaction, and of course, what happens with the news events that we do have, right? It's more based off of just the news in itself, because we can have technicals lined up, but of course technicals, news always trumps technicals. So you'll see whenever 2 p.m. hits or 2:30, or when we have earnings in the after hours, that's a lot more important because that's a news factor, right? News is always going to be a lot more important than technicals. Sometimes they do line up with one another, but you can have perfect technicals, and if the news that comes in bearish, right, that can invalidate it very quickly. All right, let me go into a few other tickers. UNH yesterday, nice break towards the upside. We had this mini flat top on the hourly time frame, super nice. Broke above this, nice continuation towards the upside. Hit a bunch of main targets that we did have, and now you can see the next level that we have is going to be our 380. But nice breakout here on UNH. Now you just want to see continuation. Continuation is going to be above our previous day highs. If we look at this on the hourly time frame, you could even see a potential pullback down in towards our 356, and it'd still be very bullish. Preferably, you just like to see continuation above our previous day highs, but it can also come back down and retest that 356. But okay, as for today, as I mentioned, not really expecting too much pre-FOMC pre-earnings. Going to be a lot more hands-off today in the markets, and then I'm going to come back later into the day to see if there's any sort of setups that we do have. But yeah, as for the SPY and Qs, similar thing for you guys, right? Just be a little bit more hands-off coming into market open. If you do see anything you like, right, it's really just going to be on, right, Tesla, NVIDIA, AMD, and a couple of these memory names, right? MU still looks good. You have SNDK. This one has earnings in a little bit, but Intel, we'll keep an eye on this one, right? WDC, STX, right? Those are the names to keep an eye out for today. The rest of the names are Apple, Google, Microsoft, Meta. All these ones have earnings, so you don't really want to touch them pre-earnings. IV is going to be elevated as well. If you do trade pre-FOMC today, be on lighter size. I'd say at least minimum half risk. It's best to just be more hands off and just wait for FOMC. And then if you do want to trade, you can come later into FOMC or after earnings, or even tomorrow. A lot of the big moves that we always talk about usually happen after the news. So I wouldn't be surprised if today was fairly choppy, doesn't really have a clear direction. And then tomorrow we're going to have a lot of setups because it's going to be after FOMC, after earnings. There's going to be tons of good setups within the next couple of days. So if there's nothing that sets up today, we're going to be patient, and then we're just going to wait for the news events that we do have. And then I do expect a couple nice trades and some nice opportunities moving forward. But yeah, that is going to be it for me today. A little bit of a shorter one here, but of course we do have news later into the day. Yeah, with that being said, I am going to call it a session here. Hopefully you guys did enjoy it. If you did, appreciate if you guys drop a like and sub, and I will see you guys all tomorrow. All right, take care everyone. Peace.